My name is Bond.
James Bond.
James Bond.
Come in, Univex. James Bond here.
Which lunatic is going to get you? The Lektor, I say.
The international crime syndicate Spectre devises a plot to discredit and kill British secret agent James Bond by offering up the Lektor cipher machine, accompanied by the lovely Tatiana Romanova. Mastermind Rosa Klebb recruits the unsuspecting Tatiana and the formidable counter-agent Red Grant. Once in Istanbul, James Bond and his contact Karen Bey are soon entangled in a web of intrigue between the Russians and the Bulgarians, and both survive multiple attempts on their lives. Bond makes contact with Tatiana, and the trio steal the Lektor and escape from Istanbul on board the Orient Express. But Spectre agent Red Grant is also on board the train. Karen Bey is killed, and Grant poses as Bond's contact. Once Grant reveals himself, it's a grapple to the death. Bond is victorious, but he and Tanya are not out of danger yet, as the two are confronted by air and by sea. Arriving safely in Venice, Bond faces one last threat in the form of Rosa Klebb, but Tatiana makes her choice. And the two enjoy a proper honeymoon in Venice. Written by Richard Maybaum and Joanna Harwood, directed by Terrence Young, 1963's From Russia with Love.
Wow, all those spoilers, man. What the hell? If you haven't, since 1963, if you haven't seen it yet, come on now.
Right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, actually, we should address the fact that there might be some kids that are just getting into this, you know? So, yeah. Watch the movie, come back.
Public service announcement. Yeah, don't watch any of these reviews. See the movie, and then come back and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
So, welcome back to my good friend Scott, and happy birthday, Scott. You think
I
forgot?
Thank you. No, thank you, my man. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Your present is on its way.
Oh, get out of here. Thank you.
It's tiny, believe me. Don't get excited.
This is a great movie. I mean, this is going to be, you know, I was thinking about this before, and I'm thinking, we're going to be talking just always praising these films, especially these early ones. But I'm like, we're not doing this because we think these movies are just okay. You know, we love these movies, especially some of the early ones. So, yeah, kind of bear with us while we have a love fest.
Yeah, this is truly, I have always said that this is kind of the golden age of James Bond. So the first few are going to be, you know, quite a Gus session. But yeah, I mean, here's another one. I mean, we did Dr. No, we love that one. And this one is, you know, it takes it up a notch. You know, I mean, it's you know?
You read my mind. I was just going to say that, I swear. No, it does take it up a notch. And I think not only in the story content, but also in, I think in the direction too, Terrence Young's direction. I think in this film, he gets he's kind of getting some pages from the Hitchcock Notebook, if you will. And maybe we'll discuss that further as we talk about more of the sequences.
Agreed. Yeah, it really is. Again, if you liked Dr. No and this was your next film in the series, you could definitely feel a much more heightened sense of danger. You know, death is a much bigger thing here. I find that there's a lot more. It's got a lot more seriousness to it. You know, even though it's much more elevated in terms of like the set pieces or, you know, a lot more fun. There's a lot more action, a lot more explosions and stuff. But yeah, I think that it's got a much. I think most Bond fans that are kind of like, you know, classic fans will always look back at this one and say there was something about that one. There was a sense of realism and intrigue in that film that's kind of unmatched. I
agree. You know, we're moving away from Dr. No, which was sort of like, when you start to think about it, it was sort of Ian Fleming's tribute to Fu Manchu, which was very popular literature at the time, you know? And now we're moving away from that story, and we're kind of getting into this more of a intrigue, something that almost could have happened in real life. And I think it's a great, and I think that's also one of the secrets of the James Bond series and its longevity is the way it's able to kind of do different stories. And it's not the same thing over and over and over again, you know? They're able to sort of kind of get different story types and make them work.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I again, this is the early days, so they're literally still doing the Fleming novels pretty much word for word. Well, not literally, but I remember when I read the book, the first almost third of the book is the plan by Spector on how they're going to get James Bond. And I thought that was sort of interesting how they do stick with that a lot in this. It moves very quickly. You know, I feel like it does not take us long before we meet James Bond and we're on the mission. Whereas in the novel, I felt like it really just sort of goes on for a long time.
It actually does take up a lot of screen time here. I mean, James, he's not really James Bond in that teaser.
Right.
The actual James Bond doesn't really make an appearance. I think it's like 18 minutes into the movie, which is quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's very true. And that teaser is interesting too. And as I rewatched the film today, I don't think it's been a while since I sat down and watched this one from beginning to end.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed about the teaser was I thought that there was a conscious decision, an effort made. Connery's face is not expressive at all.
Yeah,
in that
and
scene.
they
that?
kind of pancake make him too, just to make him look like he's got a lot of makeup on and stuff like that. So you can kind of tell that something's off.
Yeah. It's interesting too, and for years I never bothered to notice that, I suppose, but this time I did notice that his facial expression was very still and stoic, and he is sort of caked on with some makeup, but he looks very plastic. So when they do the reveal with the mask, it's not that looking back now, of course, it's kind of a little obvious when he pulled the mask off, but for back then, it's not it's pretty good work.
Yeah, it is. And I think they had to refilm that because when he first pulled it off, the guy didn't have like any facial hair or mustache or something, and it was confused people. So they actually went back and they reshot that and they put him a mustache and everything. It seems like kind of a big reshoot though, because they do that tilt up and it's like Robert Shaw is there and everybody else, and they're all walking towards, and the building is lit up. And it's like it seems like a hard reshoot to me.
Yeah, right.
You want to do an insert?
A lot of work for not much.
I don't know, but what do I know?
Yeah, right. So that was pretty good. And I remember when I watched that thinking to myself, like, you could have just grabbed the guy and got the thing around him and then not actually killed him. But okay, I guess.
Right.
Pretty hardcore, these Spectre guys. But that goes to like what I said before about how like there really is, death is a real bit. I kind of feel like in Dr. No, like 1, 2, 3 people get killed aside from like some flunkies or whatever. Like actual characters get killed. Here it's like I feel like people are dropping dead all over the place, So I think there's a lot. That's why I say there feels like there's a lot more seriousness and a lot more danger in this one.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Even like the secondary characters, they make them quite interesting, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Like Krylenko and it's the guy who gets killed in the mosque. I mean, even those guys. I mean, they don't really have much dialogue or anything, but they're interesting. I don't know if they just picked interesting faces or what it was, but they're interesting characters nonetheless.
Yeah, well, they go the extra mile to give them personalities.
They do.
I mean, I feel like they do that with all of the characters here. I mean, we could start with the big ones and work down, but you could tell by the attention they put into a character like Karen Bay.
Karen Bay,
becomes the archetype for that character. I mean, going forward many years, we will see characters like this, Bond allies who sort of have that sort of father figure-ish.
It's hard to beat Pedro Armendáriz as Karen Bay. It's my favorite of the Bond like contacts or the sacrificial lamb kind of character. He's just great, and I mean you really feel the gravity when his character is killed on the Orient Express there. You really, it's one of the first times I think in the Bond history where you really get kind of emotional a little bit,
Yeah, it is true. It's true, and it's great because you can understand Bond's explosiveness because they took the time to make you like this character. You started to like him. You enjoyed having him around. So when he's killed off, it's not just the sacrificial lamb. Like no, you feel the loss.
Yeah, and
so it really works.
I think Connery and Armendáriz have great chemistry. There's just something
Yes.
you just can't buy, really. It's just like one of those things where
Yeah.
it works, and it works like gangbusters. And you can kind of tell Connery respects this guy and really likes him. I don't know. Maybe they hate
Right.
each other. I hated each other. I don't know. But on screen, then those guys are the best actors ever because
Right.
it just comes across.
Like, it's a very well thought out script too, by the way. 'Cause
Oh,
again,
yeah.
they didn't like even when Bond first arrives in Istanbul, and you get the scene with him and the guy is it customary for people to tail you. I can see this guy's tailing us. Can't you see that? And the guy's like, oh yeah, they do it all the time. We follow them, they follow us. So I thought that was clever.
That's one of Karen Bay's sons, which was kind of a neat little thing that they threw in there.
Yeah. So it was cool. Right. So then when they meet, and he says, he's a very intelligent young man. Oh, he should be. He's my son.
Right.
Like that's a great line, a great introduction, and it tells you a lot about the people that Bond is sort of getting involved with already. That this organization they know what they're doing, and that's one aspect about it that's really great because then again, as things move on, and you'll hear Karen Bay say things like, It's not like them to break the truce, and why would they, be trying to kill me? So like you get that sense that things are pretty much in place here.
Yeah, it's good too because like even in scenes like that, they're always doing it when they're kind of like on the run or something else is going on. The exposition in this movie is great as far as how they dole it out. I think 'cause sometimes this can be dry and kind of I've seen like so-called spy thrillers where. They all sit down and they just start to, again, discussing the plot. And it's just like, I think I talked about Hitchcock earlier. I think this was heavily the train fight in From Russia with Love between Robert Shaw and Sean Connery. I think it was definitely influenced probably by the shower sequence in Psycho. I think that the notion of the sort of the slow buildup. Well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. When Red Grant has him, there and then basically Red Grant again, it's like almost like that scene in Dr. No where they're kind of just talking exposition, but it's done so well, and the fact that you have it with Red Grant, you haven't really he hasn't said much in the film. He's been sort of like this specter of death. You see what I did there?
Very nice.
Yeah, he's doling out this exposition, but you're hanging on every word because, like, this guy's finally saying stuff, so it must be important, and it is. And but there's also the conflict. Bond's in this jam. He's on his knees. He's in the train compartment. The guy's got a gun on him. It looks pretty hopeless. And then you talk, the gold coins, and they play with that because he's like, the suitcase. He's like, I'll have a look, and he's like, put your hands back in your pockets, and then you're but then he's like, then he goes for the second case, and that's where he gets him. But there's like this slow build up to that, and then and the editing's pretty calm, and I wouldn't say serene, but it's kind of just the way films were made back then. That's kind of like that pace, and then all of a sudden you have this crazy wild fight in there, and the editing goes crazy, and I think it's taken a page from, like I said, Hitchcock's Notebook. Where it's like the idea of that build up to that shower scene, and then it just all of a sudden that girl getting slashed in the shower. I think it's good. They get inspired by it, then totally copy it, but says okay, let's do that. I think there's some of that going on here, whether it's conscious or subconscious.
Yeah, well, I think I
and
agree
it's
with
cinema.
you. I
It's
think
cinema
conscious
nirvana. It's an important. I hate to use the kind of word important. Just kind of get highfalutin with it.
Works.
But
I get it.
But I think it's a great piece of cinema. It's just marvelous. And Robert Shaw as Aces, by the way, he's fantastic.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody being any better in that role. I really can't.
Right? Yeah. Oh my God! He's two of my all-time favorite characters played by Robert Shaw.
When I was a kid, I'm digressing for a second. When I was a kid, he was like my favorite actor, and he died when I was rather young, and it was like, but it was kind of a weird lesson. I was like, oh, we don't kind of all stick around forever, do we? but he was like my favorite because like this and like you said, Quint, sort of like he was like one of my favorite actors.
All right, so what do we think of the plot? The plot is sort of interesting because it's very. I kind of feel like this is the early MacGuffin.
It is. I mean, it's like the whatchamacallit, the Lektor. I think for this is perfectly fine. And they make a few things about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm on board. I think it was like, again, I keep bringing up Hitchcock, but He was also like the MacGuffin is like the thing that everybody wants, but you don't really care what it does. All that matters is that the characters care about it and want to get it.
And I completely agree with you. That works perfectly. I think one of the other Bond films that I always think of when I think of the MacGuffin story is For Your Eyes Only.
Yes, and I would say that's, even though they seem so different and they feel different, it definitely has a lot of similarities to From Russia with Love.
I would agree with that. I think it's perfectly, serviceable to do a plot where it's a race to get this thing, but from there you can do whatever you want. You can go off in so many different directions. And
I think that For Your Eyes Only is one of Moore's strongest films in the Bond canon.
Oh,
yeah,
easily, yeah, absolutely, yeah, right. And it's not a coincidence. So yeah, I think the story here is great. Again, you're getting a Cold War story, which I've always sort of joked that the franchise is sort of known as being Bond as a Cold War hero. How many times is he actually in the Cold War?
Very rare.
The Cold War in Istanbul will not remain cold very much longer.
As opposed to going after some megalomaniacal baddie.
Right.
But here you get it in spades. You get the whole Cold War thing. Like they said, well, some days we follow them, some days they follow us.
Yeah.
And they just sort of keep the peace, and the Cold War is very much a thing there. So yeah, I think it's a great. It's interesting because like Dr. No, this one makes Dr. No look very simple, and I don't mean that as a bad thing necessarily, but this one definitely gets much more into the web of spies, that sort of stuff.
And what's kind of neat, if you're into your Marvel Cinematic Universe, this sort of has a connection because there's mention of Dr. No here in this movie, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. There is actually right. There's still a very slim attempt at continuity.
Yeah, and this is probably I almost can feel like Dr. No From Russia with Love. It's kind of almost like the perfect double feature. Because they sort of complement themselves in a way, and they're both a little different in their stories. Gotcha. So it kind of works well as a double feature.
Yeah, it absolutely does. The tone is still very similar. You know what I noticed in this one? I think that there's an attempt to get Bond to smile a little more. Remember how we were talking about Dr. No, and I kept saying that Bond always seemed kind of grumpy and gruff?
Yeah.
I noticed here, especially in like the Gypsy camp, he's smiling a lot, almost to the point where he looks kind of odd smiling. Like
I just think he's having a good time. He's he still hasn't gotten to that whole quip for everything kind of thing.
Right,
he's still very much a human being in here.
Yes.
But don't get me wrong, he's always got the good lines though.
Oh yeah. All right. So he's got the lines, he's always cool as hell. I mean, one of the things I love about it is when he checks into his hotel. Again, and I know we sort of talked about this in Dr. No, that scene where he's going around the hotel room, finding all the bugs and checking the phone and stuff. One of the things that's really struck me this time was that they played the James Bond theme during that scene, like loud and clear.
I know.
You know what I mean?
It was loud. I know.
Like they played that
almost
as if
a little bit too much, but yeah.
Right, as if this was like the biggest like action pinnacle.
That's the interesting thing now is now they save it for like some crazy stunt thing, where he's hanging off the end of a helicopter, but he's successful in vanquishing the enemy. Then they'll go da da da, which is totally valid. But like him walking into a hotel lobby, you're probably not going to hear the James Bond theme in contemporary cinema now.
Well, I did notice, and again, this is fast forwarding a little bit, but I remembered when David Arnold was scoring. When David Arnold first started scoring the films, he did that a little bit.
He did.
When Bond arrived in Tomorrow Never Dies, when he lands at the airport, they play the Bond theme. And I remember thinking, like, now that's a throwback to, you know what I mean?
You're right. It's few and far between, though. But you're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's, we're jumping way ahead for a moment, but that David Arnold score for Tomorrow Never Dies is pretty great.
Oh, yeah. Well, David Arnold, I mean, again, we'll talk about him when we get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Stay tuned.
But speaking of the Gypsy Camp scene, oh my God, is that such a great scene? And and again, it's a scene that again, I think it gets kind of taken for granted at this point.
I kind of like it too because you're kind of getting a little bit of the feel of the gypsy culture and so forth.
Yes,
and that's really interesting too.
Yeah,
we're really in an exotic local.
Absolutely, yeah.
Locale,
right? And it worked. I love the whole scene there because like the first half of it is sort of Bond meeting the gypsies and the gypsy girl fight, right? And again, that's very much they're basically showing you a culture, like like when I love the part when the two girls come out and they start to yell at each other and Bond makes the joke about I got it without the subtitles, whatever.
Yeah, that's great. That's Martine Bestwick as one of the gypsy ladies there. Yeah, she'll come back later as Paula in Thunderball, and she did some Hammer films. She was in I think 1 Million Years BC, the Raquel Welch one, and sort of the follow up to that Prehistoric Woman. And she did a movie I love. From Hammer Films, a latter-day Hammer film called Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, which I know it sounds terrible, but it works, and it's a really great movie.
No, it's funny.
Yeah. And she plays the Sister Hyde, and she's really great.
Nice. But I love the part when Karen Bass says, like, from here on out, don't say or do anything.
Yeah,
and that really kind of like, oh, wow, this is like serious. These people are serious.
Yeah.
But again, I love how that scene is broken in half by the action scene, like when the guys break in and there's the big gunfight. That's a pretty big scene too, by the way.
It is.
Like it's almost like a throwaway moment, looking back, but that was a pretty big production.
Oh, it is. And you could also make an argument that this is where like the big action scenes kind of started for Bond, because there's quite a few of them here, a lot more than in Dr. No. You have the Orient Express fight. You have the Gypsy camp scene. You get later on with the boat. So there's a lot of action scenes going on in here.
Agreed.
One thing I just before I forget, one thing I think it was Quentin Tarantino. He talked about this really quick. He talked about like hangout movies, like Rio Bravo was a hangout movie, and The Good, the Bad, the Ugly is our hangout movies because they're kind of like characters you really love to just kind of spend time with.
Yeah.
For me, From Russia with Love kind of works that way too. I love hanging out with Karen Bay and Bond and like in the classic, early 60s. It's a great kind of hangout movie for me now, I mean, going beyond the story, because I know the story so well now. And that's how it kind of works for me. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna see what Karen Bay's doing today. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. Because again, it's so well written because you get that instant camaraderie between the two.
Yes.
I mean, like they seem to bounce off each other just so well right from the get-go because it's so well written.
Yeah. One person we haven't talked about is Rosa Klebb.
Ah, Rosa Klebb, yeah.
Yeah, because we...
Lottie Lenya, yeah, she's terrific. She's great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like if like Red Grant was enough, she's like the cherry on top or the icing on the cake, whatever you want to call it. She's terrific.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, she's an actress who, when she was younger, was a very attractive woman. She was a very attractive actress, so like it was sort of like kind of ballsy for her.
A departure for her, and she I think she did like the Three Penny Opera, and very much a stage actress.
Yeah.
But yeah. And she, I heard the one thing she loved playing a role. The one thing she was a little nervous about was sort of the suggested lesbianism, and that kind of was she was a little awkward with that.
Is that right?
Other than that, she was game. So
it's interesting that it's funny that would bother her because honestly, when you watch the film, because again, I remember like reading like, oh, this character is a lesbian, but when you watch it, I mean, there's one scene where the guy reaches out and she pulls back and she cringes. But then they cut later to where she's talking to Tanya for the first time. Yeah. And her hand goes right on, like very comfortably puts her hand on her leg or whatever. So, I mean, that's kind of like the indication, oh, I get it now. She doesn't like men, she likes women. Right. But other than that, you really would not know that from this character. She's just an unpleasant lady,
Yeah. And she also comes back at the end there. One of the things I kind of miss from that they're not really doing that much in the new Bond films. I really miss the whole, you think the thing's all wrapped up and then you have one last little surprise,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this, character. Yeah, it's
right.
It's kind of a neat little thing. I wish they had done that with Dave Bautista and Spectre rather than the way it did end. Because I think that could have saved the movie a little bit. At least she would have, walked out maybe with a better, action sequence or what have you. But yeah, whatever.
Well, it's funny you say that too because I kind of felt like one of the, not a detriment, but one of the things I noticed about the film this time around was that there did seem to be almost one too many of those moments. Because I felt like once Bond defeats Grant on the train,
you feel like that's the climax.
Right. Yeah. It feels like that's the climax and it feels like the movie's over. but you still have a good way to go. You still have the big scene with the helicopter. They got the train and the helicopter's there. Then there's another scene in the boat where the boat chase, which is great, by the way. But again, it sort of feels tacked on at that point.
It does. I think because that scene is so brilliantly done between between the great dialogue and the performances of the actors and the exhilarating fight.
Yeah.
It's just a pinnacle, and it's kind of hard to top. I mean,
right.
Grant was
the threat that was looming in the shadow the whole time. So once he's like, it feels like that's the big
It's
climax.
a release of the tension of the movie, that's for sure.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like those other scenes are sort of oddly placed now afterwards, where it's just Bond and Tanya, and then you get almost the third add-on with Rosa Klebb, and that one I kind of feel like the Rosa Klebb one makes sense.
That is great though. That's a great.
It's good stuff. I mean, it's classic Bond, and it's a great.
Yeah.
I mean, and she's been lurking too, so that like you said, that was sort of that punch, that almost a post, add-on. But again, it's the other two that sort of look clunky in the whole thing. I mean, I wouldn't get rid of them because they're great scenes. The helicopter scene is great. Especially the boat chase. I mean, the boat chase is awesome.
Yeah, the boat, and I know that boat sequence actually was kind of a bitch to shoot. I know that John Steers burned his hand doing that. He's the special effects guy.
Okay.
And there's a lot of things. There was a lot of mishaps on that too. Daniela Bianchi. I know that she was in a car accident, I think, during production, and they had to shut down for 2 weeks because she was all right. I think the car rolled over all this thing, but like her face was all swollen, so they had to shut production down for a couple weeks. So yeah, it was kind of like it wasn't exactly a smooth shoot. Yeah.
I noticed in the boat scene there is one shot where there's a guy standing like once the fire breaks out.
Yeah, you can tell some of that. That's
a guy. He gets like his hand caught on fire, and it looks like a real guy really burned his hand.
I don't know if that's John Steers or not, but I
wonder. Yeah.
Another thing that what I love about this era of filmmaking is no CGI, man. If you want a boat on fire, you got to go out and light a boat on fire.
Yeah, that's it. Right.
There's no way. There's no green screen or anything. I mean, there's back projection, but you can always tell when that's going on. So. When you see like something for real like this, it's pretty thrilling as far as I'm concerned.
You know what? And by the way, since you mentioned back projection, I noticed when I was watching this time around, I felt like it was a big step up from Dr. No, the back projection.
It is. I mean, back projection. This is it's just it was kind of like part of the times. They were the way that was just one of the techniques they used. I mean, Hitchcock used it quite a bit, and some of his back projection doesn't look that great either. I mean, hail the master, but I'm just saying.
So one thing real quick, too. One of the things I also noticed this time was I thought the film was, and I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, but the film had a kind of a sexiness to it. And when I mean sexy, I mean legitimately, like, there were moments that were very kind of sexy and sensual.
Did that make you horny?
Well, I mean, I guess there were things that I noticed, like even like Red Grant, the masseuse who's massaging him.
No, you're right. There's definitely, and it's not it's not subtle either.
Right? Yeah. Like she pulls off her top, and it's kind of like for 1963, you kind of go, oh wow, that's a thing. There was when Tanya's wearing her dress and she goes, okay, then I'll take it off, and she pulls it off. And then, by the way, you had the scene where she's naked walking to the bed, and it's very veiled, so you really can't see anything. But again, I kind of sort of watched this and said, this is 1963. Like, this is.
It was quite the hot stuff back in the day. It was kind of like an adults only. I mean, it's even weird. You can even go late as Moonraker, and that sort of like seems almost like it's for kids, that movie. Sure. But there's a lot of overt sexuality going on in there too.
Yeah. And the other thing was the Gypsy Fight too. And it was funny as I was watching it this time around. It's funny because the girl fight is so iconic and it's so well done in this, and it's so. I mean, again, it's iconic for a reason. But it's funny because I say to myself, like, in real life, there is nothing more awful to me than two girls fighting.
Oh shit! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh really?
Yeah. I can't stomach it. Like if I see, like like people pass around YouTube videos like two girls in a fight, I can't. I can't handle it. I really just can't deal with it.
Well, okay.
It's just a thing with me. So again,
you weren't a fan of like Glow or anything like that?
Nah. Well, I will put it this way: if it's choreographed like this one, then maybe. But
right. I kind of, it's okay if let's not go down this road.
But for them to be able to do the Gypsy Fight again, as it's a beautiful. I mean, again, two beautiful girls. The costumes are great. Everything about it is so great.
And it's kind of cool that he asked to stop the fight.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Right.
Very
yeah,
classy.
that's a great. Right. There's a very classy Bondish kind of moment.
Yeah.
Now Bond saved the guy's life. Okay, here's my request. Stop the girl fight. Whatever.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Mr. Cool, Mr. Connery.
Always cool.
And he's great. We should talk about him real quick. I think as great as he was in Dr. No, he totally takes the reins here and somehow is like even better than he was in Dr. No, which is pretty amazing. He's more comfortable in the role now.
Yes.
He just has an old pro's grace. Not only is he Mr. Cool, I gotta say, man, he's probably one of the best actors or best movie stars or actors, whatever you want to call it, that we've had ever.
Oh yeah.
In my lifetime.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, like you said last time, he's got that incredible presence, and who would have foretold that he would have been as good as he was? But he is absolutely dynamite, and he is getting more comfortable in the role. It's interesting because there's sort of an arc. He's a little too serious, too not quite comfortable in the first one, and then towards the end, Connery just looks like he's so checked out he doesn't even want to be there anymore. But this is definitely the sweet spot where Connery is really, I think, peaking at the role. Like between, I would even say, I probably like Connery best here, even more than Goldfinger and Thunderball. Even though I think he's great in those, but I think he really is probably peaking in From Russia with Love.
I think there's a story about Laurence Olivier, and he's or was it Alec Guinness, one of those prestigious actors, and they were on the set of something. Maybe it was Alec Guinness, I don't know. And he's kind of sitting and he's moping to the side, and the director goes, "Hey, what's wrong?" And he's just like, "Well, I just don't know, how I'm doing. I haven't heard much feedback and everything." He's like, "Are you kidding me? You're terrific." And the thing is, though, the moral is that they wanted to hear it. They want to know how they're doing.
Sure.
They have insecurities just like anybody else.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that could be happening too. I mean, if he's just doing it, he might just be like, well, I'm just gonna phone this shit. I don't know.
One of the people we haven't talked about yet, which is a big one, is Tanya. And the relationship between, we could talk about the dynamic between Bond and Tanya.
I watched a movie recently on Amazon Streaming called Operation Kid Brother, which is with, she's in it.
Okay, I think I remember that one, but good.
Yeah, Adolfo Celli's in it, and Lois Maxwell and Bernard Lee are in it as well, and Sean Connery's younger brother.
Right.
And hence the name Operation Kid Brother. But the cool thing was about it, you get to see Lois Maxwell like fire a gun, and it's a terrible movie, and it's shot by it was Italian shot. And so everything is dubbed, and I don't think it's Neil Connery's brother. But I digress. Yeah. But she's in it, and she looks fantastic in it, by the way.
Yeah, she's stunning, and I mean, again, it's interesting how I like that they were going for, I guess, the blondes, especially around the time of, you always hear about the Hitchcock blondes or whatever, and like a lot of the actresses, they tended to fall on blonde actresses, but they didn't do like an Ursula Andress redo. They did somebody with a different kind of a look. And
that was the thing that got me about Operation Kid Brother. I was like, oh, that's her. But they really glammed her up in this Operation Kid Brother, whereas here it was more realistic, where she was, I mean, she's still beautiful, but she was more like, she's like the secretary.
The girl next door.
And she's Russian, so she's kind of, it's not like, a complete, I mean, she's beautiful, but it's just, wow. When I saw this Operation Kid Brother, I said, wow, she really is gorgeous.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like how her and Connery work together, because again, you really do get a sense where I think and this is something that they've touched on in other Bond films too, and I think it works really well when they do this. You could see that Connery has his eye on the ball for the most part.
Yes.
And then there's sort of like you could see him kind of just drifting a little bit, falling into, he's having fun with her. and enjoying her company.
Yes,
You know?
that's one of the great pleasures of the film is you kind of like thinking he's
Yeah.
actually having a good time here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the two. Right. They're playing around in the car together, in the the train car. She's trying on the different outfits, and they're just sort of like lying around, flirting and playing together, or whatever, messing around. You could tell that they seem to genuinely enjoy each other's company. Then, of course, you get the moment where Kerem gets killed, and he snaps back. Like now he's now he's back on the clock, and now he's annoyed that he took his eye off the ball, or he got a little too comfortable.
Yeah.
It makes for a great moment.
It sure does. It's that's great stuff.
Yeah.
And it feels real too. Like he's not played. That's what's great about this movie. It sort of reminds me a little bit of like Casino Royale, the Daniel Craig one. Is that they kind of had those moments where it could be light and they're playful, and then it turns on a dime.
Right.
And that sort of happens here as well, which is great. I think that's like sort of the perfect kind of mix for a Bond film for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of the things that I kind of noticed about it that I kind of had mixed feelings about was when Kerem gets killed and he starts, I want answers or whatever. When she starts doing the whole, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I was like, all right. Like, and I kind of get it. And I know you and I have talked about this before, where I think saying I love you in a film is like, it's like the worst bit of dialogue because it's probably the most on the nose way to deliver something.
Yes, it is. It's always awkward too. It's awkward in real life too.
And I was watching this and I was sort of saying to myself, all right, but I get what it is. Like they probably would not have said something so obvious, except for the fact that it's Bond. I guess he can't decide, or he just doesn't believe that she's genuine. And he figures that she's not. So that's sort of the dynamic of why that is. Still, as she's sitting there saying, "Oh, I love it," I was like, "All right, I get it."
I think it's okay though because like by then he's slapped her and he's like sort of interrogated her and she's like, what the hell? I mean, she must be going through a range of emotions. So I'm fine with that. I think that seems kind of logical. Oh, one thing I do want to touch on. This is the first full-fledged John Barry score. From beginning to end, which is really great. And it's the first appearance of the 007 song, which is different from the James Bond theme.
Right.
It's that music that plays when at the the Gypsy camp when those guys come in and they bust in.
Yes.
Krylenko and his gang, and then later on, when they're escaping with the Lektor and the rats. That's what Richard Maybaum said. The one thing Ian Fleming said to him about From Russia with Love is like, "Are the rats in?" And that was one thing he wanted to see. So, But this John Barry score is a great start. It's terrific. It's vintage. It's amazing. And we're only going to get better from here with his scores.
Exactly. Right. I mean, and we said this last time too, but it's amazing how early on we got so many of the fundamentals, the foundation people of the franchise that are really going to make Bond what it is.
That's the thing. It became sort of like a family team, of these very talented people that got together and they made these, I think, pretty extraordinary movies. Because they can go down as, lazy popcorn entertainment or on a Saturday afternoon. But some of them really do have some great subtext and are wonderful pieces of cinema, in my opinion. Not to get too highfalutin, but just I think some of these are cinema treasures. I hate to say this, but the title song is a little corny and a little dated.
Oh yes.
maybe I get something a little more, I don't know, hipper. Yeah. I don't know. But that's it. It's okay. I mean, the From Russia. It's fine. But it would be kind of cool if that had like a better title song, I think.
Yeah,
or end title in this case. I mean, the main titles are fantastic. The John Barry thing going on with the instrumental.
Yeah.
I guess is that. Let me think. I think this and Untitled Secret Service are the only two that are instrumental. Well, I guess you could argue Dr. No is instrumental too, although they have Three Blind Mice come in there. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And I agree with you that it's so funny. I was thinking about it today. It's so weird how I can look back at something from the 80s, which is 30 years ago now, and still think that's kind of semi-modern. But just 20 years before that, I look at it and it's like oldie time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that theme, the From Russia with Love theme.
From Russia with love.
You know, again, I like all the Bond theme songs, but
Sure.
boy, does it feel old. Like, I think we used the word,
I know.
I think we used the word musty at one point.
It's like musty. Let me get this musty one. You know, yeah.
Seriously. As far as something I kind of noticed that if I could do it better or go back in time and fix, I kept noticing the ADR, a lot of the dubbing is really out of control. It's almost like they just don't even mic people when they're actually filming. They just go back later, just dub the whole thing over. You know, there's a lot of that. They do that a lot. Like the girl at the end when Bond first checks into the hotel.
I'm sorry, sir. That's all we have available.
What are you doing here? Looking for shells?
If you listen carefully, that's the girl that dubbed Ursula Andress in the first movie. It's Honey Rider's voice.
Yeah, I think that actress, that voice actress, I'm pretty sure was in like most of the. I thought I heard that she's been in like a lot of Bond films in a lot of places you wouldn't even notice.
It's pretty crazy.
Ursula Andress is completely dubbed. Sylvia Trench, I believe, is dubbed by the same actress who's dubbing Ursula Andress. It's weird how they felt the need to do that. I can understand the need, I suppose, but it's looking back, it just seems so kind of odd. But yeah, I felt like there was so many times I'm watching the film and I feel like the lips are not even remotely close to what I'm actually hearing. So I thought that was a little weird.
I think in its own way, it's much better than say like some of the Italian westerns that you would see dubbed, which are so obvious. I mean, there's still some of them are very good.
Sure.
And I know later on in his career, Orson Welles shot a lot of films silent because of just budget concerns.
Yeah.
And some of that you can see the dubbing is really bad. So to me, when I watch this, it's like, wow, this is really good. It doesn't bother it doesn't bother me that much. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah. I do. My favorite part basically is when they're on the Orient Express. That fight scene is one of the classics of cinema. And what more can one say about it? It's fantastic. And you know what was great? The restraint. There's a on the soundtrack album. There is a thing there's a track called "Death of Grant" that doesn't appear in the film. Okay. I wonder if Barry originally scored that for that scene. But anyway, it's kind of neat the restraint that they did. Just not even using a musical score for that sequence.
Nice.
It works really well. Really well.
Agreed. My favorite part would be the Gypsy Camp. I feel like I've seen them a million times, but for some reason today it really
panned out for you. That's good.
Between the actual girl fight and the actual gunfight, and I thought like it made a sort of a perfect combination and made a great overall scene. And I thought it was just really working for me this time around. So I really enjoyed it.
My score for this is a perfect 10. I got to go with the 10.
Wow.
Because it's my favorite James Bond film. It's the peak, and we're James Bond fans, and I really can't find almost anything wrong with this. I love the direction. I love the screenplay. I love the score. I love the way it was cast. All these superlatives, I know, but I love it. It's one of my favorite films, not only as far as a James Bond film, but just as a film in general.
I tell you what, I was originally going to come in here and kind of go one lower than I did for Dr. No, because for some reason, Dr. No always really, there was a shine that Dr. No had for me, and from Russia with Love, traditionally, I know like most Bond fans love it. I always had a little hard time kind of getting it, and even though I'd seen it a million times and I always enjoyed it, I was going to give it a 7, but I'm giving the sucker an 8. And even that feels a little dismissive, but honestly, I feel like it because possibly plot-wise, I find it to be a little clunky, where, like you said, the climax sort of happens a little too early, goes on a little long. But there's a lot to really love about this film, and I kind of feel like I'm sort of getting it more and more. Like I said, I really enjoyed it this time around. Maybe I hadn't really given it enough of a chance before, but yeah, I really enjoyed the hell of it. So I'm gonna give this one an 8 too.
Well, you're being a lot more fair-handed with your scores, but I'm kind of like shooting for the moon here. But especially these first 6 films, I just love them to death.
Sure.
So, yeah, get ready for more high scores. Don't worry, though. I got my darts, too. Don't worry.
And again, I'm sort of doing everything on a curve. Or like I said, my least favorite Bond film would be one. My most favorite, as opposed to like, just a film in general, even though it really has more to do with, put it this way, when I start getting into like 4 or 5 or whatever, you're going to be like, oh, wow, that's... so, yeah, seriously. So even my lower scores, it's really not, again, it's still one of my favorite movies, but it's just in the pantheon of the Bonds, I have other ones that are... All right, my friend, well, listen, happy birthday again.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back next time with Goldfinger.
Ooh-hoo-hoo.
Being James Bond Reviews will return.
Can't wait.
See you next time, my friend.
Good night.
James Bond.